So welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and joining me today is Nicole Cline. Those of you who've been listening to this show for a while, week after week, know that I've been talking to alumni. Yeah, it's AE or I, depending on the gender of the alum. What I've always been really curious to know about them is what brought them to Middlesex, and then what about Middlesex has carried them forward into whatever life path they've followed. So Nicole is here today. We've been very interested in a legislative internship program because Middlesex right now has the largest number of interns serving in the legislature of any of the community colleges in Connecticut. It's always nice to be first, right? So we're first in that regard. We have 7. So why don't we start with, what was your experience like?
Sure. I had a very wonderful experience with the internship program. I was there in 2010, and Professor Lincoln was the advisor. I understand the program's a little different today, but we didn't have 7 students. I believe we had 3 or 4. I can't remember the exact number. I thought it was a wonderful experience. I learned a lot about the legislative process, all of the lingo, if you will, that's used around the Capitol, and even in publications like the Hartford Courant or anybody that covers politics, for example, what it means to kill a bill. I think the everyday person doesn't understand exactly what that means and all the different ways that a bill can get killed. So you learn a lot of that lingo while you're in the legislature. A lot of the public hearings, very interesting to go to listen to people. I think there have been some notable ones more recently now with a lot of the gun control debate going on. There was a hearing that went till 3 a.m, and there are legislators that will sit there and listen the entire time. Some other hearings on pieces of legislation that aren't necessarily as controversial might not go on as long, but still learning how to sign up to be in a public hearing and then waiting your turn and all of these things. Very interesting, very informative. I would encourage, even if you're not involved in politics, a lot of these legislators, they're business people or they're community leaders, and you can learn a lot from them also. It doesn't have to be just being involved in politics.
Were you interested in politics when you came to Middlesex? Did you come here as a first-time student?
I did. Okay.
When
When I came to Middlesex, I came and took 2 classes. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was actually a chef at that point. I went to Vinyl Technical High School here in Middletown and got a job at Mohegan Sun as a chef, and then I worked at the local hotel here on Main Street, the Inn at Middletown, and decided that I didn't necessarily want to be a chef forever. I was tired of the long hours, working holidays, working weekends, and just wanted to do something else. And so my first step was coming to my local community college, being Middlesex.
We got lots more to talk about, but I'm afraid we have to take a break. And when we come back, let's talk about the first experience you had here at the college, because I always think that first experience kind of shapes the way you think of yourself as a college student. Well, we're back, and I'm talking today with Nicole Cline, and she came here as a first-time student after a brief career in the culinary arts world. And so what I was curious about was, what was it like the first semester? Because as I said earlier, it shapes the way that you think of yourself and whether or not you imagine yourself to be successful and on your way to some goal in the future, or whether or not, it's kind of an assault on your sensibilities, and it's a strange world and you feel lost. And so somewhere in between, I think, captures the experience of all the students. But what was it like for you?
Sure. I didn't have any long-term trajectory plan when I came here. I was a part-time student, and I wanted to get a couple of the basic classes out of the way. And one of the things I really liked was the environment was very adult-like, in that when I had these expectations in high school where, you go into a class and there's a lot of chit-chat going on. You can't necessarily pay attention all the time. You come to some place like Middlesex, or really any university for that matter, and you can soak up a lot. You can really be a sponge because there's not all the distractions in class. I know it seems like a very small thing, but when you're first coming to a new environment, like you said, my expectations were a little bit different, and that was a very good thing for me. I like I said, I didn't necessarily have a long-term plan, but one thing I was surprised about was I thought I was a good writer. And one of my first classes was an English class. In my first paper, I got a C. And I was very disappointed, and there were all kinds of markings on my paper. And I went home, and I remember talking to my mother about it because I've been surrounded by people that say, yeah, you're a great writer. You got the grades in high school and all that, and you come to this environment, it's harder. But that class taught me over time what I needed to do in order to make the writing smoother, make it sort of more compact. And I ended up getting a good grade in the class. I got a couple A's on later papers. I think there were 4 or 5 papers for that class. But that was also another shock that you have to work for your degree, and you're going to get out of it whatever you put into it.
Yeah, that's really the case, isn't it?
Yes.
Let me ask you something, because now you're a part-time student at UConn, right?
Correct.
Right now?
Yes.
And so you went to school here part-time, you're going to school there part-time. What do you think about the whole push in this country to try to get more students to go full-time and to graduate more in a shorter period of time? You know, to go through a 4-year school in 4 years, or through a 2-year school in 2 years. Most students do not go through Middlesex in 2 years and earn a degree. It takes a while, and it's going to take you a while. But so, what do you make of that?
I think there's a lot of different aspects into what you're saying here, into that conversation. One of them being the cost of college is going up. It's going up dramatically every year. And is it something? Should you go into debt for a degree to begin with? That's something that you need to think about. And the reason that I have chosen the path that I've chosen is for that reason, that when I came to Middlesex, I paid out of pocket. I did not take out loans. And right now, as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to UConn and I'm paying out of pocket. So that's something that should be considered if you're thinking about going to college. In terms of the push to get these students to sort of finish quicker, I mean, everybody's different. I don't think it would have worked for somebody like me. Like I said, when I got out of high school, I wanted to go and be a chef. I wanted to work in culinary arts. Well, lo and behold, that wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I think when you decide that this is what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to do no matter what, you might find that once you get out in the real world and experience it, it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be.
I actually think that, related to what you're just saying, that to some degree it's important to think about what you want to do for maybe 3 to 5 years. I think in the old scheme of things, and you did this at a very young age when you went to Vinyl Tech as a freshman, right? 14-year-old.
Sure.
In the old days, you would say, okay, I want to be a chef, and that's what I'm going to do forever. Or I might want to be an elementary school teacher, and that's what I'm going to do forever. But really, the work world is changing so dramatically. You know, so many jobs exist today that didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago. That is, if we just have a shorter horizon, the pressure to make the right decision is a little less. I think to think about it in segments. And so many things will intervene if you decide to have a family, or if you decide you want to take some time and not advance your career, but actually explore something that you're personally very interested in, like maybe work in the Peace Corps or travel around the world, or do things like that. So everything doesn't have to be this linear and constantly rising ladder of success. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you balance work, and are you working full-time now?
I'm in between jobs right now. I was working full-time right up through December, so right now I'm in between jobs.
So you're working roughly 40 hours a week and taking 2 courses?
Not quite. In electoral politics, there's sort of this rush toward the end in the fall where you're probably doubling your workload, if not more. So throughout the year, I would take 1 class here, 1 class there. So I would take 1 class in the spring. I took 2 classes in the summer. Fall, I didn't take anything because it just wasn't going to happen. And then I took a winter intersession class. And so you take them here and there. If you can take 2, then that's great. But I would emphasize that you want to make sure that you have the time to dedicate to the class to get the grade.
Exactly. So you manage your workload. So let's talk electoral politics. So what did you do in the fall semester that you were working? When I said 40 hours, you kind of looked at me in a funny way. So I'm thinking it was more than 40 hours a week.
Way more than 40 hours a week.
What were you doing?
I was fundraising. I was the deputy finance director on one of the congressional races here in Connecticut. It was the fourth most expensive congressional race in the country, and that includes outside money as campaign money. So the outside money, there's no responsibility for that if you're a finance director. It's only with what you can control within the campaign. So a lot of it is talking to major donors. They might be, CEOs or CFOs at bigger companies. Could be a lot of event planning. I would say most of the actual work involved, a lot of what took up a lot of hours in my day would be the event planning. You're talking maybe 10, 15 events a month.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
What kind of events?
Fundraising events. This is not this. Yeah,
wine
I
and
would
cheese.
say. Yeah, wine and cheese. Sometimes if you had a what we call a surrogate come in, you could have a 2-tiered event. So like a special VIP roundtable and then just a regular general event. It could be low dollar, high dollar, and this would be aside from what we would call the political staff, what they would be doing, because of course they're setting up what we call meet and greets or other roundtable discussions or press events. And so we all work together sort of seamlessly, but there's sort of the fundraising shop and then there's the political end of it, and they're two very different things.
Is there another sort of set of administrative people who are saying to you maybe a week at a time, you said you were going to get to $67,000 by this week, but you're only at $42,000?
Yes,
yeah?
There's a lot of political liability if you come out and you say, especially to the press, I expect to raise X amount of dollars. Or even if you don't do that and you have a field of opponents that are outraising you, then it could look like you have a lack of support just by comparison. And the numbers change all the time, especially when you get towards the end, when you get into the fall, and you're talking about media buys. The campaign manager, he would come and talk to myself and our finance director and say, I need another $100,000 by Friday. Okay, we got to make that happen somehow.
How did you even begin to learn to do this? I mean,
Another very long story.
Let's hear it.
From the legislative internship program, I had the opportunity to work with a couple of candidates. And what I did was I started my own company. I started a company that didn't have a big plan for it. I just wanted to have sort of a legal barrier between myself and the campaign, so a campaign would just hire my company rather than Nicole Cline. And it worked out well. I had a couple of successes, particularly in the northeast corner of the state. And after that, I probably kept the company up for about a year. I took on some municipal races after that, still going to school. And I heard about this new fundraising firm, political fundraising firm in Connecticut, and they were looking for people, and some of the clients that they were looking to have, I had a connection with. So I went and talked to them, and they hired me. Basically a startup company. It was a very new fundraising model. And from that, their model was, you are embedded as either a finance director or a deputy finance director in a campaign. So for them, I worked for 3 federal campaigns. Before that, I worked for many other campaigns on my own, not just for fundraising, but for the political aspect and the press and all of those good things.
There was a report the other day that said that the U.S. economy maybe shrank a little bit or didn't grow at the rate that it was expected in the fourth quarter of 12. And I couldn't figure out why that was, because when I imagine the amount of money that was spent on the presidential campaign, and at the end on television, pretty much all you could see were political ads.
Right.
So you're just looking at tremendous amounts of money. So
Right.
when we come back, I want to hear what you think about money in the campaigns in our country.
Definitely.
Well, welcome back to Middlesex Moments. Today I'm talking with Nicole Cline, and we started talking about what it was like to come here as a student, Middlesex Community College, transition from that to the political internship you had, and transition from that to this amazing career raising money for political candidates, campaign finance. To start this conversation then, I'm curious if you would just tell me what you think about the role of big money in American politics today? Now that is like a ginormous topic, but what's your take on it?
Sure. Well, being involved in the campaign, it could be a blessing and it could be a curse. And I say that because when you have, for the rise of the super PAC based off of the Supreme Court decision that came out a couple years ago, this was our first presidential campaign seeing that in action. While money is important in a race, there probably is some threshold where it doesn't matter anymore, that it just sort of levels off. And again, like I said, working in a campaign and seeing outside spending come in, you literally will read the paper on a Monday and see that an Ohio super PAC has decided to put $1.1 million into this race. And why I say that could be a blessing and a curse is it could be a blessing because, hey, that's a lot of money on our behalf. However, you have absolutely no control of the message. You have no control of what they are going to say about you or your opponent. If you go very negative on your opponent, this super PAC rather, it could look like it's you. It could look like it's coming from your campaign and you're running a negative, dirty, nasty campaign. They could come out positive for you and highlight some positions, but maybe our internal polling shows that we don't want to, those aren't the positions that necessarily resonate with our voters. We want to talk about other positions. So I think while I understand it's a freedom of speech issue, from a campaign perspective, from a political perspective, you never know what they're going to say or what they're going to come out with. And that could be a problem if you're working on a campaign. You might be actually a little afraid of what that $1 million is going to do.
It actually, and you know, what I've understood reading about the political race this last fall, that most voters have kind of decided which way they're going to vote anyway, right? So they're really battling over a very small minority of, maybe you would call them independent voters or undecided voters, and so you want to try to sway them. There are also, this last race, this was so amazing because there are these exogenous variables you couldn't possibly predict, and I think in Mitt Romney's case it was the taping of his comments at the fundraising event where he said, you know, most of the people in this country are takers, and they're always going to vote for the Democrats, and that was a surreptitious taping of him. So I'll probably go down to, you think in the history of campaigns is something that, I mean, I thought about this because you were saying you can't control what the PAC is going to say. Well, you also can't control some of these things that are going to get picked up by the media and that will, you know, really harm your chances of being elected.
Sure. I think it's, today with all the new technology now, there are these things on campaigns, and I don't think this necessarily happened in Mitt Romney's case. I'm not sure who taped that or why it was taped, but in campaigns they have what we call trackers.
And what's a tracker?
And a tracker is a person that follows your opponent around with a camera. And we had a tracker, and other campaigns had trackers. And sometimes they're actually hired by the parties, the Republican or Democratic parties. Maybe the DCCC or the NRCC will hire a tracker to follow an opponent around, and they'll work with that campaign. And I bring that up because it's while you can't control some of the outside spending and other things that don't come out of your mouth but come out of somebody else's mouth, a candidate has complete control over what they say at all times. And in today's new media and new technology and in the era of trackers, it's important that a candidate is on their toes all the time. Even if it's a private fundraiser, they really can't say things that, even if they think it's the right thing, they can't necessarily say everything that pops into their mind, even if they think it's a private event, because as we saw, that got out nationwide. And even though Mitt Romney thought it was a private event, somebody was taping it.
So when we talk about the campaign, the candidates, they need to be highly disciplined people, and they also probably need, you know, to have the kind of record that has been very clean for very long. They're honest and upright and all of that. Does it make it harder to actually find people who really could be successful candidates? I mean, do you think that it's changed so much? The idea of having a tracker is remarkable to me.
Right.
So there's never an off moment. There's no privacy.
There's no privacy.
The schedule, your schedule was grueling. I assume
the candidate's schedule is minute by minute. You know what that candidate is doing, where they are, who they're with, who's driving them.
So what,
absolutely,
you know, what does that tell us about the demands that we make on our politicians?
Right. I do think that Unfortunately, you can be a great campaigner and a terrible public servant. You could be a wonderful public servant and a terrible campaigner. Being a campaigner and a fundraiser, because you're a candidate, you are the chief fundraiser. That's a completely different skill set than crafting policy and being able to get things done. So I think we do turn off some people that could potentially be wonderful in serving our system in politics, but they can be completely turned off by the demands of campaigning and secrets coming out that might be nothing to you and me, but the press puts it out and all of a sudden it's this terrible thing. So I think the system with campaigning does turn some people off, and I have seen candidates that I have worked for and have not worked for cast thousands of votes, but only the 2 or 3 bad ones are talked about versus all the other ones that they've made. And so it does perpetuate the idea that you have to have a very perfect track record. And I think that unfortunately happens in our political system with votes. Well, if I vote this way now and I want to run for this office later, how is that going to affect me? Unfortunately, I do think that happens.
There are so many subcomponents of the enterprise that backs up, actually kind of produces the campaign. To what extent are there people who advise candidates to be a certain kind of person in order to be elected? I mean, this isn't. This is the opposite side
question.
of do you genuinely care about public service? Are you a statesman?
Right.
Or are you going to be sure you say the right things to the right people so you can get elected?
Sure. I think you can spot opportunists a mile away by one thing. Have they served in public office before? If you're a candidate running for higher office and your track record is just enterprise and you haven't served on a local board or maybe in the state legislature, you have to question, why do you want to get involved on this federal or grand scale level now? So that's one thing I would say, is if you want to look at an opportunist, that's one way of looking at it. On the flip side, there's a lot of people that don't like we call them the career politicians. They sort of work their way up through the legislature and then Congress and maybe even Senate. I would say, again, these are people that do have a record of public service. So they're voting based on their constituency. And that's how they are sort of able to get. And look, a lot of this is in the hands of the voters. The voters make these decisions. We talk about we have to kick out the Congress. I hear that kind of talk all the time. They have the lowest approval ratings, I don't know in history, but in a very long time. It's in the single digits. That's pretty bad. But we keep electing and re-electing the same people. So there has to be some responsibility bared on the voters also.
This is why I really I love working at a college, because I believe I'm actually working to help people become literate consumers, of all of the information, because we're just inundated by information. You got to be able to sort through it, figure out what you're really hearing, and make a reasoned decision about who you vote for and what community meetings you attend and all this stuff. So you were a relatively young person and you've had these phenomenal experiences. Have you ever considered running for office yourself?
I have, but like I said, you want to do it for the right reasons. You want to make, good decisions, and you also, there's a lot of people that run and they have no intention of winning. They just want to make some sort of a statement. I'm somebody that if I wanted to run, I would want to win. And because I would want to win so that I could make a difference. I don't want to run and steal the thunder from somebody else that could run just to make some sort of statement. So it's a matter of the right timing, and I don't know if that'll ever happen, but it's something I've considered and something that people have brought up to me before.
Yeah, I can see why. If the candidate is the chief fundraiser, and and you know how to do that.
Sure.
And in a very short while. I mean, your internship was 2010?
Yes,
This is
correct.
2013.
Right.
And you've gone from really not knowing very much to
Right.
knowing a huge amount.
Sure.
The experience you've had is incredible.
Sure. It's been amazing.
But at the same time, I'm going to come back to this because we're going to, the program always comes quickly to a close. You're still enrolled in school, sort of.
Yes.
Courses, of course, 2, 1, 3.
Sure.
So, do you have a major in mind?
Yes. I'm a
good.
communications major.
Okay.
I was political science, but I discovered that probably wasn't for me. I know it sounds funny. It was a lot more about policy positions and geopolitical systems and things like that. And I think that's good if you want to be maybe a professor in the long run or something like that. But I actually want to use my skill set in the private sector. And I thought communications would be a good way to help get that career path off and running.
This has been so great. I'm so happy I had a chance to meet you. I hope I get to see you often.
Thank you for
again.
having me on.
You're welcome. This has been the Middlesex Moments radio show. I've been talking with Nicole Cline, who is a dynamo. If you're interested in learning more about the college, Middlesex Community College, you can look us up online at MxCC.edu. I'm Anna Wasasha, president of Middlesex Community College, wishing you a very good day.